Anyone remember this commercial?
This is Rayman. This is a man called Ray.
For anyone who lived their childhoods in the late 90s and early 2000s, this was the commercial that got them first hooked into the much-famed Rayman series of games. Of course, you gotta remember that this game has 2 in the title, so this isn't the first game Rayman starred in. Let us rewind back to the olden days of 1995. The original Rayman was a 2D platformer for the PS1, Sega Saturn, and other lesser consoles around at the time. It came packed with what was considered to be very stellar, hand-drawn graphics which made up this vibrant world full of pink plants and limitless creatures. Its difficulty was right up there with the likes of Ghosts and Goblins, but we didn't care. It was still a fun game. Because of how much love it got from the general public, a sequel was inevitable. Initially, Ubisoft was going to make it into a 2D platformer much like the original, but with the rise of 3D gaming, this original version of Rayman 2 was scrapped in favor of what we got today, Rayman 2, The Great Escape. This game was a much different beast than the original. Aside from the obvious 3D gameplay, it had a different cast of characters and it went from being happy and cheerful to somewhat
dark and threatening.
But not to a point where it's overboard. Despite the darker tone, it didn't forget that it was still a Rayman game, and as such you'll be promised a colorful cast of characters and a sense of humor, even if the latter element is somewhat underplayed here. Just like the original, Rayman 2 proved to be a hit, and to this day, it's still the most accessible game in the series, having been released on nearly everything after the N64. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's get right to the point. Many of us know about Rayman 2 on the N64, Dreamcast, PS2, and so forth. But we're not going to delve into those versions. We're actually going to take a look at the version that many consider the black sheep of them all, the PS1 version. Unlike the other versions, which are all taken directly from the build created by Ubisoft Montpellier, the PS1 version is a completely different specimen. While it does inherit a few things from the Montpellier build, such as controls, music, and backdrops, it also came with its own quirks like different level layouts, altered gimmicks, and new enemies. So without further ado, let's actually take a dip into this pool of different-ness and take a look at Rayman 2, the PS1 version. For the two of you who've been living under a rock for the past 10 years or so, the plot of Rayman 2 is this. An evil band of space pirates have invaded Rayman's world, now called the Glade of Dreams, and have wreaked havoc all over the place. Under the fearsome rule of this pint-sized metallic dictator called Razorbeard, they've decimated the heart of the world and it has scattered into 1,800 looms. Yes, I'm calling them looms. Blame the Rayman Origins manual, not me. Anyhow, with the heart shattered, the denizens of the Glade have become weak and powerless against the Armada. Even Rayman himself has had his power zapped right out of him, leading to an easy capture. As a last-ditch effort, the Great Fairy Lee has entrusted Rayman's best friend, Glowbox, with a silver loom with which she asks him to give to Rayman. So what better way to do that than to turn himself in to the pirates? And out of sheer dumb luck, he gets locked in the same cell Rayman was kept in. Isn't that nice? He gives Rayman the silver lum and he regains enough power to bust out of the ship, and with that, Rayman's great adventure begins. Now, before we get into the technical details about the game itself, I'd like to bring this tidbit up right now. Unlike the Montpellier build, which has all the characters speaking in rather convincing and enjoyable gibberish, this is the first ever version of the game that actually has English voice acting. So how good is it exactly? Well...
You'll pay for that, soldier.
Who dares disturb me? You have defeated me. My pleasure belongs to you.
Welcome. I am Holocaust.
I can't fly anymore.
That's pretty much it in a nutshell. The English dub is pretty much 64 flavors of bland, unappealing, lacking in heart, and is severely missing a healthy dose of David Gassman. At least Rayman 2 Revolution did a better job than this, even if it wasn't by much. Either stick to that, or, better yet, go watch Plotline Plus's Rayman 2 video. I know it's a shameless plug, but really, anything is better than what the PS1 port did. Ugh.
He's completely crazy.
So with that out of the way, now let's talk about the game. For the most part, it controls exactly the same as the Montpellier build. He still runs like this, jumps like this, shoots like this, strafes like this, and hovers like this. Control-wise, there isn't a whole lot to talk about, as Rayman controls pretty much exactly like he did in the previous builds. With that said, however, the level layout is quite a bit different. Most of the levels in this game don't play out exactly like they did in the other versions. More times than not, you'll be put through different challenges you may not be entirely used to by this point. So in a sense, the PS1 version isn't so much a port rather than a somewhat different game. Speaking of levels, the basic order of levels from the original are mostly the same. However, some have been switched around and others have been completely taken out for whatever reason. For example, in the original Rayman 2, the Cave of Bad Dreams was actually intermixed with an earlier level, the Marshes of Awakening, and you only got access to it once you met up with Clark at the Menhir Hills. In the PS1 version, though, it's right next door to the Menhir Hills, so once you met up with Clark, the area is immediately open on the map. Another example is that you have to tackle Whale Bay much earlier than in previous versions. In fact, it completely replaces the Sanctuary of Water and Ice, which was where you found the first mask of Polycus. Oh, right, the masks. If you're unfamiliar with the masks, they're plot devices Rayman has to collect to reawaken the great god of the glade, Polycus. If Polycus can reawaken, he'll be able to wipe the pirates off the face of the glade. Getting the masks in the PS1 version hasn't really changed at all compared to the Montpellier build. However, the gates leading to them are a little different. In the original versions, you'd often come across gates that are locked tight without the required amount of looms to pass through. However, these were placed before the sanctuaries where the masks are usually found. In the PS1 version, they actually lock up the next set of levels leading to a new mask. It's not that much different, but it is worth addressing that you're still going to need to splunk for looms in order to advance forward. As mentioned before, the number of looms in this game has decreased from 1,000, or 999 looms depending on the version, to 800. You'll find them out in the open, but they're no longer trapped inside cages. Now the cages are actually filled with random prisoners the pirates have captured, such as fairies, chicken dinosaurs, and... Murphys? Huh. Well, I didn't think I'd see this, but yeah, Murphy in this game has been demoted to prison fodder. In the original game, Murphy was your guide who taught you all the tips and tricks on how to play the game. Now he and his many brothers have been captured and stuffed into cages. So who exactly will be able to teach you how to play the game now? Well, that job now belongs to Lee, a major character in the game who usually helped Rayman by creating silver looms that gave him additional powers. She was also the one who told Rayman about the masks of Polycus after he rescued her from the fairy glades. Ugh, yeesh, those pirates did a number on your polygons, woman! Well, to her credit, she never pauses the game immediately to state the painfully obvious when you approach a tutorial stone. She just gives out a simple text proc which you can easily skip if you already know what to do. Thanks, Lee! So you're gonna be in the upcoming Rayman Legends, right? Well, son of a... Okay, I think I went a little off topic there. Let's get back to the cage system. Unlike previous versions, they don't house looms, but random prisoners. However, it'd still be wise to break as many as you can. Why? Because every time you break a cage, your health meter will rise up a little bit, allowing you to stand more of a chance against enemies. In terms of what you'll be up against, you'll still be fighting a lot of robot pirates in the same ways you did in the original build. One of the few enemy types that's been given a bit of a boost in appearances are the ninja pirates, who you fight a total of 4 times in this version rather than 2 in all the others. Occasionally you'll also come across these pipsqueaks, the Anti-Toons, which are actually an homage to the original Rayman game. There's really not much else I can say comparing the PS1 version with all the others, so I'll end it off with this. If you can beat the game with a specific amount of looms, you'll unlock a bonus level which is actually based on the prototype to Rayman 2. It plays almost exactly like the original Rayman, however it is a bitch to complete, and you can tell that this is in fact a prototype. It's a nice treat to say the least, as it does give us a look at what Rayman 2 could have been, and thankfully isn't. If you were to give me a choice between this version of Rayman 2 or another version of Rayman 2, I'd probably go with another version like the PC or 3DS version. But does that make the PS1 version a bad game? Not at all. In essence, the game is probably the most different out of all the ports, and because of that, it's a pretty special case. Its gameplay is still pretty solid like always, and the level layout changes are appreciated. The only thing that hurts the experience is the voice acting. Again, it's a pretty weak dub that did not do Rayman any justice. Other than that, the graphics aren't up to snuff as other versions. Oh, just look at them pigs of shake like a maraca! But it's not a huge deal, and if you can get past them, the game is still pretty enjoyable. I mean, really, you could do with a lot worse. With all that said, I think I'll rate this game a 7 out of 10. While this version doesn't top the Montpellier build at all, I can at least appreciate that I tried to be a little different. If you're itching to try this game out, it is available on the PSN for about $6. Though if you'd rather just stick with the version you already own right now, that's fine too. Take the footage for what it's worth and see if this is a game you'd like to try for yourself. For the 9th time or so. This has been QuikViews, and I'm Captain Reginald /JamesManExtreme, and I hope to see you all for the next episode of QuikViews. Take care.